Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host, Kushalmehra. My guest today is Smita Prakash. Smita is the editor news at Asian News International, ANI. She's also the India correspondent for Channel News Asia, a Singapore based podcaster. Uh, Smita has had a long career from NPR News America, NHK Japan. You can also remember Smita from Ghumta Aina on ZTV or Newsmakers at DD. She was also the host on the show this week in India, which was the longest running show on television in South Africa. Smita, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me over, Kushal. Just a small correction. I am no longer working for Channel News Asia. I was doing it for the longest possible time, and that stopped about 3, 4 years ago.
Oh, all right. So I'm sorry about that because I when I did my research, it was up on your bio on the website. So I was like, I'll
Yeah,
just
all
go
my
by the
stories
website now.
are still, yeah, my stories are still up there. They haven't taken them down and they haven't said the former correspondent. So they're still up on the internet.
All right, all right. So Smita, let's start with this. You've had a long journey, as you know. I just read on the bio. So if I was to ask you, let's say in the 2 decades that have spanned till now, what was the one fundamental change, if you would say, that you have observed in the media landscape itself in the last 2 decades? Let's work with that first.
Yeah, so when I started off, in journalism, the only outlet which was available in private, as far as television is concerned, uh, there was no outlet. There was only Doordarshan, which was state-owned, and the only private participation in that was that we could make documentaries or we could make news spots for Doordarshan. Otherwise, it was like you make your documentaries and they get aired outside of India. So it was a very limited kind of way of working. So there wasn't much happening as far as television news was concerned. That all changed with Narasimha Rao opening it up, and or rather, it was Rajiv Gandhi actually. He opened it up for private broadcasters. Soon there were private channels which opened up, and then it was like it started off with Z. It started my first foray into private news as such is with Business Plus. That was they used to come out with these VHS cassettes just like News Track. So I used to do something called This Week in India. So that's how I kind of learned how to edit videos of news and put it together and anchor as such. But that was very restricted just to an Indian audience. Um that was in the early 90s, I would say 89, 90. And then, exposure to foreign media is what kind of changed my outlook. And when these private channels came up, it was then that, there was this huge influx of journalists who came in from the print into television, and it was a very vibrant period to work. And the way we did journalism changed. It was like quick. Otherwise, any information that you needed to go to the press information bureau, sit there, meet with government officers. And you know how the government is, they're very cagey about giving you information. So getting information, getting data was extremely difficult. And then Google opened up everything. Initially, I still remember that when we installed Google in our computers in the office, we didn't give it out to trainee journos. We didn't give it out to the young journalists out there because we just felt you're not going to be working hard enough. You're not going to go on the ground and get the information. You won't go and meet people. All you'll do is Google. It was a bad word in journalism initially. Uh, it just goes to show how short-sighted we were, not realizing that information you as a journalist have to figure out that what is right, what is wrong. There's a lot of information available. So that kind of changed journalism hell of a lot when when information was available on the internet. Also, we could send out our news stories faster. That was Otherwise it was such a task. Initially when I was working in for a South African channel, we didn't even have diplomatic relations with South Africa in those days. But officially we didn't. Unofficially, there was trade going on. South Africans were coming to India. I still had a passport which said not valid for South Africa in those days. And anyway, so when I started working for them, what South Africa wanted was that they wanted similar to what I was doing for Business Plus, which is news from India, because people there did not know much about news. All they knew about India was what Bollywood was putting out. So they used to actually think that, people wear saris with the heavy jewelry, and romance in India was running around trees and that kind of thing. And when they used to visit India, you're talking about two generations of or three generations of South Africans, middle class, who had not been to India, who didn't know much about India. So when they would land here and they'd see these broad roads and they'd see our airport and they all those things, it was like shocking to them. So there was this hunger to know more about India. So again, that changed, when I started doing news for international broadcasters. And that's why at ANI, all those who worked with us in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s had a lot of exposure to telling the India story to foreigners. Have I deviated, Kushal?
No, 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 not at all. See, that's the thing about podcasts. We don't need to bother about where it goes and how it goes. But look, so look, good you brought it to ANI. Now, ANI works in a very different way, right? It's not your standard. If I was to say, let's say if you're an 18 to 25-year-old who's raised in this culture of corporatized media, where there are big media houses, there are big news channels. So an 18 to 20-year-old would have literally grown up with a very normal life where NDTV is normal, let's say Times Now is normal, and I'm just giving names as an example of media houses. In such a time, you have ANI working. I don't know if the right word would be like the business model of it or the survivability of it, because at the end of the day, the bottom line matters, right? It's not like we are running a charitable organization. These things have to feed themselves. There are people's lives at stake because their houses run on it, so they depend on it. So how does ANI manage to survive in such a competitive environment today, where everybody, I mean. Is going on TV, and there are like 16 heads at times on TV, and in such a model, how does ANI manage it then?
So we don't have 16 heads simply because we don't do debates. And as a news agency, we didn't have a model to work with because there was no television news agency when we started out. And it's a series of coincidences and the way the Indian economy moved, and we morphed, we changed uh, as per the needs of our subscribers. So when we started out, we had just two channels, and both were based in America. So we were providing news from India to America. So we started off in 1988, if I'm not mistaken, as a news agency, 88 or 89, I'm not exactly sure. So we would sling together news stories and put them in a VHS tape, and not VHS, sorry, it was a U-matic tape. It was a U-matic tape, and we'd send it to America. In America, we had a correspondent. Because see, the print service was separate. The print service was also on because there were newspapers, private newspapers. But for television, so we would send it to America. In America, it had to be converted to the NTSC format because we are not on the NTSC format. India is not. So it was converted onto the NTSC format and then sent to our clients. So news from India took about a week to get aired in America. That's how we
Damn.
started. Then yeah. So then private channels opened up, and then of course once we started doing that with America, then UK opened up, and then Australia wanted it, and then South Africa wanted it. So wherever there would be Indian community, they wanted news from India. And they didn't want just Bollywood because Bollywood was coming any which way from Bombay. They wanted, and they didn't even want much of business news because there wasn't much happening, right? Our economy hadn't opened up. So there was hardly any business news happening. And they really wanted, news as such. What was happening with the Congress party, what was happening in Punjab, what was happening in Kashmir. So we would cover all this for foreign channels. And once we did that, we had a kind of a model going for for international channels. BBC came in, NBC, CBS, NPR, everybody wanted news from India. Especially, I think what happened was when Rajiv Gandhi got assassinated, that was one of the stories. When he got assassinated, there was this plethora of channels from America, from the UK, from Germany, Scandinavian countries. They all landed up out here, and everybody thought that riots would break out on the streets of India just like they did in 1984 when Indira Gandhi was assassinated. So when they all came in here, and I was working like like a glorified fixer for all these guys, taking them around, and and I could see that they were actually like, oh my god, we've spent so much and come to this country and there's nothing happening, everything is in control. There was this disappointment which was so palpable that India hasn't gone to pieces. And then I realized there's something changing in the India story, the way it's being told, because I think it wasn't fitting into a narrative which they wanted, and it was easy to do those stories. It's not as if they were biased so much. It was like, when you're already, when you're a reporter and you go to a particular country, you hunt for those stories because you think your viewers are looking for that. So the easy or the lazy way of doing journalism is to just pander to that preset notion that people have about India. It wasn't happening. So those things started changing. So we started doing news for international channels, and it was, they were waking up to the fact that their things were changing. We got a lot of support from our international partners, Reuters, who said that yes, you need to up your coverage from India, because there is a growing need for news to be told to us or given to us by Indians from India. So we didn't play a voiceover, but we had a script which we would give our clients, international clients, via Reuters and it went to about 120 countries by I think 1991. Then when private channels opened up, we just replicated that for private channels. We started doing that. But see, it's not as if you create a huge it's, when you talk about valuation, I'm not going into numbers, but it's not
Hmm.
like a new NDTV, or it's not like a Times Now, or it's not like if Times of India is to sell its TV properties, it would go into several millions. ANI is not like that. It's not, we don't have that kind of, we're not talking about that kind of scale. We still are a news agency. And at least so far, I mean, so long as I'm the editor, we still, on economies of scale, we are not that large.
See, that's the bit that I was interested in hearing from you, because in today's market, especially now, and now that social media has come into the play, right? Even social media has become a model. I mean, I'm on social media, if if I was to say, and everybody is trying to enter this market. So it's just a very interesting thing that there is something like ANI, like in the case of, let's say, PTI, right? PTI is backed by a lot by the state too, in that sense, but ANI is completely independent. ANI does its own thing. So I found it very fascinating. Now let's segue into two things. So first, I want to talk about the social media phenomenon. Where do you think social media is heading, and how much do you think mainstream journalism? Because nowadays, if you look at the numbers, there are some the folks on YouTube that are doing some serious numbers when it comes to reporting too. So where do you think is the next generation of news coming? Do you think the mainstream media is too big, and the kind of infrastructure they have, where if you want to do reporting, you have to go to certain places, you can't avoid, right? And you need that kind of an infrastructure, and a, a short team of like 10 people of a YouTuber just can't do that. So that place is always going to be there. But where do you see mainstream journalism in the future, in that sense?
See, lots of people, you're right, Kushal, that everybody I know of who's young is not sitting at 9 p.m. and watching the news. They're not sitting during the day and watching news on any of these big channels. Many of them are getting it through various social media platforms, whether it's podcasts, whether they're YouTube. Of course, YouTube is doing very well, and YouTube channels of many journalists I know who lost their jobs, um, they are doing fabulous work now on YouTube. You may not agree with their journalism, you may not agree with their reporting, you may not agree with their editorializing of news, but you know they're doing good work. That's what I'm trying to say. And everybody's trying to, it's also, you pick the news that you want, so you have that choice. And I always feel, I've always felt, having seen that period of state control over everything, I'm always open to, and I'm always willing to say that, be very clear on this, that I want as much choice as possible. If I have it in ketchup, I want it in news. But having said that, I'll also say this, that it's, there's a cycle to the whole thing. It's a little bit dangerous because YouTube is also, it's not verified content. Anybody can put anything out there. Here we have so many checks and balances when it comes to a news channel, when it comes to a news agency. When a reporter goes out and does that, he knows that his job is in line. If he puts out wrong information, he's not, he can't be bought as such. He can't do hit journalism. He can't do extortion. Whereas all these malpractices are there on the social media platforms, because there's no check and balance. You can do anything. You can criticize, like, for example, I know it's happened with somebody that I know. He's a rice exporter, and another person, he says that another competitor went and got a story done on a YouTube channel where they showed that his brand of rice had marble chips in it. Now he came to me and said that you do a story that I don't put marble chips on it, and I said I don't want to get involved in this. I'm not involved in this unless you file an FIR, you file a police complaint about this. I cannot do this. So these are the kind of dirty tricks that happen in many social media platforms. I'm not saying all, but what I'm saying is that this kind of extortion that happens in business finds its way into YouTube, and sometimes even journalists do it. I've heard of many journalists who do, because as a journal you have access to various places, to government offices. It's misused. There's a lot of malpractice which happens. But when we are accredited journalists, when we are journalists with experience, and we have checks and balances in what we put out as far as broadcasting is concerned, I think there's a value to that. I don't know whether that premium is something that people appreciate. But it's true that even when you go on social media, when you go on Twitter to see what is happening, if you are going to rely on, say, Pakistan, what's happening in Pakistan, you can there's so much of disinformation which is available. But ultimately, before you make up your mind, you will go to a Geo or you will go to an ARY and see whether these guys have said yes, Imran has been thrown out, or has been told by the president that you're no longer prime minister. So you will tend to do that if you're a mature user of social media, but not everybody is.
Fair enough. I get it. I guess you're right in a way that, when it comes to social media, it has democratized the discourse, but it has also weaponized and made it open to views. And but that's part of the trade, I guess. That's something that comes in with the thing. Now let's talk about something very specific, which I was just going through this report by RSF, that French NGO that conducts the World Press Freedom Index, and I was just looking through it. And so India has, I think it was 141 or 142 for 2021. The rankings were there, if I remember it correctly. And I was just going through this entire thing. First of all, I went through their methodology. I went through their questionnaire, but they don't say whom they talk to. They don't disclose all of that. They just say these are our questions. So you can go on their website, download their PDF. They have their question. It's a stand, and then they have their methodology, and then they give their calculations, how they give points for this, how they give points for that. But deep down inside, I just realized that when these ratings come out, you don't know. I mean, what is their sample size, right? First of all, that I don't know. Second, who are they questioning? That's like, I go into uh, whiskey lovers or a single malt lovers group, and I ask a single malt lovers group, do you guys like bourbon, for example, right? And then the entire single malt lovers group is going to say bourbon sucks. And then my entire rating is based on, look at bourbon doesn't do anything. And that's the entire criteria. So what do you make of these press freedom indices in general? I'm just using that one as an example, but that's just one of them. There are many out there. There is the so-called happiness index apparently, and there are many such indices that are out there. And I get confused. Like, the first thing anybody who wants to do is you look at their methodology, because you want to know, okay, how do these people come up with it? But what do you make of it as someone who's been in this field now for more than 2 decades? How do you look at it when they give such ratings and rankings to India?
I don't pay attention at all to it. I mean, I've been asked so many times because I've worked for foreign news broadcasters. Um, but I just don't believe that. I think, uh, if, see, for example, Kushal, we just finished Uttar Pradesh election, right? And what happens? We have so many people, when they did their reporting, they were so wrong in this Uttar Pradesh election, in the earlier Uttar Pradesh election. So many people went wrong. And these are like journalists who have 15 years experience on the ground. They went on the ground and they came back with mistakes, right? And why? Because so many of us who go out on the ground, what do, right? Even like you're talking about doing this survey. I don't, if you take the survey paper, you've been told by the survey agency, you need 20 people surveyed from Bombay, right? You'll get, if you got 20 and they tell you take 5 in the 18 to 20 age group, take out of that, take 8 from upper caste and from well-off families, take 6 the from Dharavi. So when you pick like that, when you pick, if you pick an upper caste person who lives in Dharavi, you'll get a different response. You pick a Dalit from South Bombay, you'll get a different response. So these cross fertilizations which happen, you'll get different political reactions from these people. The same way it happened in Uttar Pradesh, or it happens in Delhi. You go to Khan Market, you'll get a different reaction. You go to West Delhi, you'll get a different reaction. So the survey teams who do these surveys, uh, fine, their methodology there might be a science to it, but when it comes to media freedoms, where I mean, since it's my area of work, I'll just tell you for honest, because I've reported and I've visited many countries, I've seen the media over the years. There is such freedom in India which we do not appreciate, because only those who have, you can go and stick your camera anywhere in the city, right? Nobody's going to say anything to you. You can just go and put your camera on a street in Bombay and take videos of people coming and going. You think you can do that in say London? No, you can't. You have to have permission. You can't just go and shoot anywhere. Can you do that in Singapore? No, you can't. It'll be considered an invasion of privacy. So there are so many things that you can't say in many countries, which in India, just because of our numbers, I guess, and because we've had that period of emergency, that there is this resistance to any kind of state control. Now, having said that, there is a lot of criticism. It says that our news channels are sold out, that they peddle the government agenda. They are very pro-government when it comes to reporting on foreign office, on MEA, Ministry of External Affairs. They're very jingoistic, bombastic on national issues. That's always been the case with television channels. As far as the foreign policy is concerned, there's been very, very little criticism ever. It's nothing new. And the second thing is, when a news channel turns around and says that the BJP is, or the ruling party now, is winning in Uttar Pradesh, it's considered, oh, you are biased, you're pro BJP. Look what the results show. It showed that, didn't it? So if you come from a mindset which says that I don't like the BJP, so whenever you do a story about the BJP winning somewhere, I don't like you. That's not logical. That's not realistic. So when that happens, for example, say, I might like Manmohan Singh as a person. I felt that he was a good person. He couldn't do much because of his inherent personality, which was a non-aggressive personality. So he couldn't take on Mrs. Gandhi. And the history of the Congress party. So whenever I would do a story, it was with this understanding, or with this caveat that I had my story, that he cannot go beyond, even though the second term of Manmohan Singh was his term, was he had delivered the victory. So he could have if he wanted to, but that's not his nature, so he didn't. He did not have the confidence to take on Mrs. Gandhi, because those who have taken on Mrs. Gandhi in the past, who were his colleagues, he has seen them suffer. So he did not. It came too late in life for him to be the rebel, and it was not in his nature. So any story I would do would have that caveat. So now I could be considered a pro Dr. Manmohan Singh, or leaning towards Dr. Manmohan Singh. That's not the case. I knew what I was reporting was what I had seen happening. Same way that when it was Vajpayee or Advani for prime ministership, um, after the when that elections were called, and I wrote that it's not right for the BJP. First, India Shining, I think, was overdone. I wrote that. Then when I was reporting, I said that to again push as Vajpayee for prime minister, you cannot. He's a popular person, but people can see that he's unwell and that he cannot lead. And at that time, I know that I was called, the BJP guys turned around and said, "You're anti-BJP. How can you um, how can you say that Vajpayee is not popular in India?" But it was not about being popular. He was a very popular person, but people would even vote for a khichdi, for an absolute mess. But they could see that it would not be, Vajpayee would not be able to complete his term as a prime minister. So you would get an Advani. And Advani, who was so popular during the Rath Yatra and during the BJP movement for Ayodhya, was not acceptable to the people as prime minister. The BJP couldn't see that. They did not see that for two elections. That Advani, and this is when Advani has this huge, and I myself think that he's a great guy for the BJP, but everybody has a role to play, and he was not prime minister material. Something that even his closest aides, his supporters couldn't see, that the people of India could see. So, what I'm trying to say is that what appears to people and what actually happens is two different things. So, if the foreign media turns around and starts labeling us and says that you are pro or anti establishment, and the media in India doesn't have the freedom to report, not true. We can actually go to any part of the country and stick our cameras on people's faces and nobody stops us other than a cantonment area.
True. Now I'm going to talk about something that obviously I'd written to you in the email also. But this baffled me, and I'll tell you why. So, obviously, you've interviewed the Prime Minister of India recently. Now, I saw the interview like any normal consumer would, and I was okay. She's asking questions. The Prime Minister is answering them. This is how normal way interviews are done. But oh my goodness. I mean, as if the world had exploded. Oh, look at Smita Prakash. She is not asking this question to the Prime Minister. She has not asked that question. So, and I mean this. So, let us break down this art of interviewing. Now, I get it. I'm a podcaster. I'm more of a conversationalist, not an interviewer. So, I don't get it. But I genuinely want to understand what what were you supposed to do in that interview, or what is an interviewer supposed to do? Is interviewing now like a person who is a heckler in a stand-up comedy show, who is out there and the comic is at the stage and the heckler is down there, and the heckler's job is every time a comic says two lines, the heckler says, "Oye, kya kar raha hai?" kind of a thing. I mean, what is an interviewer supposed to do? Why was there so much furor? I literally went out there, look at the questions. I looked at the questions you asked him. What else were you supposed to ask him? I don't know. Could you have asked 100 more questions? Yes. You could have, definitely. But then you have a time slot. Like I have a fixed time slot where we are going to have conversation. I can ask 1,000 questions to you, but I'm not going to, right? I have to squeeze. So what do you think? What did you make of this whole thing? And what do you make of what is the job of an interviewer personally?
See, there are many styles of interviews, right? I don't have a, um TRP issue. I don't have a ratings issue. So I'm not doing an interview with ratings in mind. whereas most channels have that, so they have to get that masala element going. So it could come in by this aggressive question answer method, because see, everybody has, it's for eyeballs, right? So that's why they all have to fight to retain that, so that you don't go for your remote control and change the channel. So everybody is out there for that. So there are different kinds of styles of interviewing people. um, there and as far as my interview style is concerned, I have to supply my interview to, over 200 channels in India, and channel 130 countries around the world. So just remember, when I am doing that interview, whether it is of a cricketer, whether it is of a chief minister, whether it is of a doctor, a prime minister, anybody, I have to keep that in mind. So if I'm interviewing an army chief, I don't have to just ask him about India, China, India, Pakistan. I also have to ask him about the South Asia sphere. So when I'm interviewing the prime minister, I have several points that I need to see. I cannot just restrict it to Uttar Pradesh because UP elections were on, or Punjab, and 5 states, right? I have to ask him about South India too. I have more clients, ANI clients in South India. There are more channels in South India. So, excuse me, but I have to provide news for them. Why would my Kerala client, sit through an interview of the prime minister where he's talking only about Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Uttarakhand, and Himachal, and Manipur, and Goa? He would talk, and Punjab. He also wants to know about the entire country's information. How was our COVID fight done? He wants to know more about that. Similarly, the woman sitting in Madhya Pradesh wants to know what after Ujwala, what after soil card, what after not Indra Awas, Mahatma Gandhi, whatever Awas. So what after that? What are the new projects? If it's Har Ghar Jal, water to every home, what beyond that? What beyond electricity, water, and road? How are roads and ports going to affect me? That last mile connectivity, where is it going? So when I do that interview, so when I first interviewed Modi and I got this backlash, I tried explaining. Then I realized that it's not me that they are going after. It is Narendra Modi that they are going after. They don't like him, so anybody interviewing him, they are angry that they were not picked, and I was picked. So that was the first time. Then subsequent subsequent interviews that I did, I realized that I don't need to explain to anybody anymore. Let them say what they want to, as long as, because I am not answerable to any of those journalists who are criticizing me. I'm not answerable to the social media, which is not paying me a single cent. I am answerable to my clients. If my clients have a problem with the interview and they tell me that, listen, you didn't ask about these questions. If the editor of a particular channel calls me up and say, you didn't do a single question which impacted my state or my viewer, why did you do this? I understand. But till today, none of PM Modi's interviews which I have done so far have I got that reaction. So I get a whole lot of praise from certain quarters, but I know where they come from, and I get a whole lot of criticism from another quarter, and I know where they come from. I need to answer only to my clients, and as far as I'm concerned, my clients have not complained so far about any of the work that I've done. And as far as international clients are concerned, every time Prime Minister Modi says anything, it's news. So that's it.
Yeah, but where do you think has that art of calmly interviewing people gone? Where do you think this whole heckling the person, like even from a cultural perspective, right? हमको तो हमारे कल्चर में तो ये सिखाया गया था ना कि अगर आपके घर में कोई आया है, कोई मेहमान आया है, तो आप उनका सत्कार करते हैं. So when you're interviewing a person, even if you disagree with that person, now I'm not talking about if you're interviewing some monster or something, but right, you're just interviewing the prime minister. First of all, the position itself, has to be respected at the end of the day. Secondly, मतलब करना क्या चाहना है? मतलब what do people expect? Like You're going to go there, and every 2 seconds, why do you think this has happened? Is what I'm trying to understand. Like, if I'm here, I'm talking to you, I want to hear you out, right? And the old adage goes, right? If the person is going to say something, they're going to say it, and let the people judge. The people have to be the final judge, right? Why do you, where did, to use the right word, where did this narcissism come in interviewers, that they thought that they could be everything in this world, and they are the be all and end all, and this prime minister needs to be shown this place, or this chief minister, or this MP or MLA? Where did it come from?
I think it's more to do with television journalists, because after some time, I mean, I'm a TV journalist too, but I'm an agency journalist, so I step back. So there many of my interviews, many of my stories, you won't see my face on it, and that's agency journalism for you. Our egos get crushed very early in life. It's only now, after 25 years or whatever, that you can see my face on interviews that I've done in India. But yes, for foreign broadcasters and for foreign channels, my stand-uppers are still there, which can be viewed. But TV, I think TV journalists get these massive egos. They actually believe in that adulation or that star power, and after some time, it gets into their head. So when they go to do the interview of this person, they think they're equals, or they think that they're equals in a way. I mean, the other side is also a human being, yes, but you want, it depends on what you go with. If you going because that masala interview is going to get you ratings and you're going to trip that other person, that can work. But for me, I need information. So I mean, you were saying the other side is not a dacoit, he's not a thief, he's a prime minister. But then I've also interviewed people who are murderers sitting in front of me. Now, do I just go after them and say, you're a killer, you're a murderer, what will I get? He's going to clam up, right? He's not going to talk. So, how does that help me as far as my information is concerned? Because will a channel play that? No, they're saying, what's the point? So, instead, I need to find out what led him to that life of violence. Why? What happens? And is he satisfied with his life in the way he's doing? So I mean, I'm talking hypothetical, or maybe not. I've interviewed Haji Mastan too. So what am I getting from that? Same way as you go to conflict zones, interviewing a stone pelter, interviewing somebody who's a jihadi. I can turn around and saying, why are you doing this? Why you're anti-India? You're pro-Pakistan, and you're living in this country. What am I going to get with that? I'm not into ratings. I'm not going to beat a Republic or beat a Times Now anchor by doing that. I'm not interested. They're my clients. Both are my clients. Both are my friends. So I'm not interested in that. So I have that luxury. But at the same time, Kushal, not every journalist has that luxury. He's told by his editor, she's told by the editor, go and do this aggressive thing. So because unless you're pushed and shoved, unless you are thrown out from the room, remember that whole Sunanda Pushkar Shashi Tharoor thing. So unless that reporter became hyper aggressive, it wasn't working. It wasn't working for the channels. So the channels were, competing with each other. New channels were coming out. So they needed that drama, because then they run that drama on loop, and they get more eyeballs, more advertising, more money to spend on news gathering. So it's a cycle, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's what I guess. This will take me to my last question, because this is what I wanted to be my last question, and you've given me the perfect segue naturally. So, if I was to tell you, all right, we are where we are. I get the state of affairs. It's actually very sad. I mean, nowadays I don't understand. Is the Twitter hashtag determining what's going to be discussed on the mainstream 9 o'clock news, or is the mainstream 9 o'clock news determining what's the hashtag on Twitter? I don't know. I think both of them are like an incestuous circle which feeds off of each other. But still, there might be people who still believe in old school journalism. There might be people who believe in consuming old school kind of content. Let me tell you, since 2018, podcasting in India has taken off, which was not existent in India. I mean, podcasting is a completely different genre altogether, where just people have time and they talk, and they talk and talk and talk, and there is an audience for that too now. But if there was this young kid who's coming up in journalism, he looks at you and says, स्मिता जी, आप बताइए मैं करूँ क्या? Where do I go as a person now? Where do you see Indian journalism, let's say, the coming decade? And that will be my last question to you.
So, Kushal, look at the number of platforms which are available to journalists. I, you don't have to do just one kind of journalism. When I got into it, there was just Doordarshan. There was no outlet in television. There was nothing that you could do. You had to, we had to write a script. We have to submit the script. That script would get, like, I would write the script at say 9 o'clock. Obviously, it's not breaking news, so it would be tourism or mushroom cultivation in Himachal or some story like that. Write the script, give the script, and remember, it had to be faxed. Thank God for fax. At least we had fax the script. Script gets approved. The script comes back. Then you voice it. Then you lay the visuals. Then you send the tape. The tape has to reach Doordarshan by 3 o'clock. Some director level person, joint secretary level person will take a look at it. Is the accent okay? That was very important. In those days, accent was very important. So you couldn't have this vernacular accent English. So we had only few people who would come and voice over that story for us. We had voiceover artists who would come and voice over that story. And after that, it would get approved. And then once Doordarshan approved it, then it would get aired by the 9 p.m. bulletin, or else it would get, no, or 8 p.m., or it would get aired the next day. From that time, we have come to today, where you're doing it on doing a podcast. It's on YouTube. You can do your journalism on so many platforms, and it's not as if you can't earn money. You can earn money. You can have a reasonable, you know, lifestyle with the money that you earn in journalism. But you're not going to make a whole lot of money unless you own a news channel. So that's a different league altogether. But I think journalism, lots of openings now, much more than 20 years back.
Awesome. That sounds great. So I guess if because a lot of young kids listen to this and they always ask me, I get emails like, "Sir, हम social sciences में जा सकते हैं क्या?" I was like, "Look, I'm not from social sciences background, so I'm not going to sit here and answer that question to you. But if you want to, you can take it up." And I think personal view, I think there is now going to be this generation of the uberification of journalism in that sense
So
where
Kushal,
you'll
social sciences, if anybody asks you about social sciences, yes, social sciences kar sakte ho aap, but something that we didn't know that would be important is data crunching. That's extremely important now in whatever kind of journalism you do. So वो जरूर करना चाहिए कि किसी ना किसी तरह कोई how to read data for journalism. That is extremely important. And for me, I had to learn very late in life, and I hate it even now. So I need to ask people to demystify data for me. It's very difficult. And language, that's another thing, Kushal. I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. Language is extremely important. So if you can pick up language skills, two or three vernacular languages, anything other than just English or Hindi, that would really be helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that helps. At least in my case, it helps me because I was born and raised in Mumbai in a Gujarati area in a Marathi state, and I'm a Punjabi. And then Hindi is anyways known to us because of mother languages. And you go to an English medium school, so you have five languages in your arsenal, and you can do and maneuver a lot around it, and that helps a lot. Smita, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast. I wish you all the best, and I'm looking forward to your next interview with the Prime Minister. And let's see what the trolls say this time.
Thank you, Kushal. Thank you for being with me.
All
Thanks.
right, guys, we'll end today's podcast. If you go to the description, you can see all the details. You'll have Smita's website, Smita's Twitter handle, and the ANI details. Please go and follow them. If you like what I do, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and support the Cārvāka podcast by a membership or on Patreon or by buying the merch. I'll see you next time. Until then, namaste. Take care. Goodbye.